Welcome, dear listener, to another journey into the timeless world of Greek mythology. Tonight, we open a story woven with strength and wisdom. Two figures stand at the heart of this tale. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategy, and Heracles, the hero of unmatched strength, courage, and perseverance. Together, they form a bond that echoes far beyond the pages of myth. This is not a tale of war, nor of blood, but of guidance, growth, and discovery. Athena, with her calm vision, guided heroes through storms of doubt and challenge. Heracles, with his mighty spirit, carried the weight of impossible tasks upon his shoulders. When wisdom meets strength, the impossible becomes possible, and lessons are born. We step now into an ancient world where gods and mortals walk side by side, where every challenge hides a truth, and every trial reveals the soul of a hero. Close your eyes if you wish, and picture a time when myths were alive, when stories were not just tales, but guiding lights for the human heart. This is the story of Athena and the hero Heracles, a story of balance, of courage, and of the timeless bond between wisdom and strength. Let us begin. In the beginning, before the world knew the weight of his name, a child was born. This child would become Heracles, a figure destined for legend. His birth was touched by the divine, yet his path was deeply human. From his first breath, he carried both promise and burden. The gods looked upon him with interest, each seeing in him a spark of greatness. Yet the mortal world saw only a boy, small and fragile in his cradle. It was not clear then how vast his story would one day grow. Heracles was marked not by ease, but by challenge. Every step of his youth tested him, shaping his spirit and his will. Strength came naturally to him, like rivers flowing from hidden springs. But strength alone is never enough, and fate had much to teach him. The people around him whispered tales of his potential. They said he was destined to rise higher than any man before him. Even as a boy, he seemed larger than life, full of restless energy. He would run farther, climb higher, and endure longer than any companion. Though he laughed easily, a sense of solitude often lingered. Greatness, after all, is a lonely companion, even in childhood. Heracles sought belonging, yet the world demanded distance. His tutors taught him music, words, and the art of the lyre. But the strings often broke beneath the force of his eager hands. He was not made for delicate things, though he tried. Still, within him lived a heart both fierce and tender. He longed not just to be strong, but to be understood. The world, however, saw him as something else, a symbol, a tool of force. Heracles grew quickly, taller and broader than the boys around him. His strength frightened some, but amazed others. In his eyes, there was no malice, only wonder at his own power. He asked himself, why was I made this way? Questions often outnumbered answers, and silence weighed heavy. The gods, unseen, watched closely as he stumbled and learned. Athena especially noticed him, though she did not yet speak. She saw in Heracles the seed of a hero, though still untended. Wisdom waited for the moment when strength would need guidance. For now, Heracles learned from trial, from mistake, from endurance. When others played, he tested his body, stretching limits unknown. He would lift stones, climb cliffs, and swim through swift rivers. Each act felt natural, as though his body remembered what others forgot. People began to marvel, calling him gifted by the heavens. Heracles himself did not feel chosen, only different. Difference can be heavy, and in his quiet moments, he felt that weight. But difference also shapes destiny, and destiny had chosen him. As he grew, so did the whispers of his name. The villagers told stories of the boy who could not be broken. These tales spread like fire, reaching ears far beyond his home. Some stories grew larger than life, carrying both awe and fear. And so, a myth began to form, long before the man himself was ready. Heracles walked between two worlds, the divine and the mortal. He belonged fully to neither, yet bore the mark of both. This tension became the heart of his journey, the fuel of his trials. For strength without belonging is an endless search for purpose. And purpose was what Heracles longed for most of all. In every challenge of youth, he searched for meaning. When praised, he wondered if he deserved it. When feared, he wondered if he was cursed. Still, he pressed forward, guided by something within. A voice, perhaps, or a spark that whispered of more. The path would not be simple, nor kind, but it was his. Heracles was born to endure, to strive, to rise. He was born not only to carry burdens, but to teach through them. Even as a youth, he carried the shape of a story greater than himself. The world waited, the gods watched, and time began its slow unveiling. Heracles, child of promise, stepped forward into destiny. And though he did not yet know it, wisdom was already watching. Athena's eyes followed him, patient, waiting for the day their paths would cross. High upon the shining heights of Olympus, there lived a goddess of thought and vision. She was Athena, born of wisdom itself, radiant with clarity and calm. Unlike other gods, she did not seek chaos, nor delight in wild power. Her strength was of the mind. Her gift was the art of reason. She carried no hunger for glory, only a devotion to truth and justice. In her hands rested a shield, not only of bronze, but of protection. Upon her head shone a crown, a mark of intellect and divine authority. Athena was the guardian of cities, temples, and all who sought knowledge. She favored fairness, cherished balance, and offered counsel to the worthy. Her eyes could see deeper than appearances, searching the heart within. The Caedals, people honored her with temples of marble and prayers of respect. They knew her presence was steady, like the calm of a quiet dawn. When storms of doubt rose, Athena's voice brought clarity. When confusion ruled, her wisdom cut through like light. In the myths of old, she was more than a goddess, she was a guide. Heroes turned to her not for power, but for direction. She gave them what no sword could offer, the gift of clear thought. Her guidance was quiet, yet it carried the weight of truth. Unlike others who roared, Athena spoke in steady tones. She appeared in dreams, in visions, in whispers of the mind. Always she stood at the side of those who sought to rise. Not all could call upon her, for wisdom must be earned. She came to those who listened, who questioned, who searched within. Athena herself was patient, never rushing the lessons of time. She knew that true understanding grows slowly, like roots beneath the earth. And so she watched, guiding without forcing, leading without chains. Among all the gods, she was known as the voice of reason. She did not punish rashly, nor reward blindly. Every act of hers carried purpose. Every word held meaning. The myths tell of her as a warrior, yet more than that. She fought not only with spear and shield, but with intellect. Her battles were not for conquest, but for protection and order. The owl, symbol of wisdom, was her constant companion. Its watchful eyes mirrored her own gaze, sharp and unyielding. To mortals, she was both near and far, divine yet approachable. For who among humans has not sought clarity in times of struggle? Athena answered in ways that were subtle but lasting. She gave ideas, she gave courage, she gave patience. To her, a hero is not only strong, but thoughtful. For strength fades, but wisdom shapes the course of destiny. It was said that cities flourished where Athena's spirit dwelt. Athens itself bore her name, honoring her above all others. There she was loved not with fear, but with respect. Her gift to the city was the olive tree, symbol of peace. Its roots reached deep, its branches stretched wide, just as her wisdom did. Every leaf carried a promise of hope, of growth, of endurance. Her presence was not loud but steady, like the earth itself. She guided kings, warriors, poets, and inventors. Each found in her the strength to think beyond the moment. Each carried from her touch a sense of clarity. It was said that she looked not only at actions, but at intent. She valued honesty of spirit above displays of power. Athena was the balance to chaos, the calm in turmoil. Without her, the world of gods and mortals would be adrift. With her, it found a compass, a star to follow in darkness. It is here, in this quiet greatness, that her story joins with others. For though many heroes lived, few carried her blessing. She gave herself not freely, but with purpose. And one day, her wisdom would meet strength in the form of Heracles. Their meeting would become legend, a harmony of power and mind. But before that moment, Athena remained as she always was, a goddess of reason, patient and watchful, guardian of thought, keeper of clarity, and protector of those who dared to rise. She was, and is, the voice that whispers, "Seek truth, and you will endure." Heracles grew stronger with each passing season, yet questions lingered in his heart. He knew his body was powerful, but power alone could not answer every need. There were moments when his great strength felt like a cage instead of a gift. He longed for clarity, for guidance, for a voice to show the path ahead. And so, in a quiet hour, Athena appeared to him for the first time. She did not arrive with thunder, nor with fire, but with calm radiance. Her presence felt like dawn breaking after a long night of uncertainty. Heracles looked upon her, unsure if he stood before a dream or truth. Athena's eyes shone with wisdom, steady and unwavering, yet kind. She spoke with calm words, her voice neither loud nor soft, but certain. "Heracles," she said, "your strength is vast, but it is not enough alone. You must learn balance, patience, and the wisdom to guide your force." Heracles listened, his heart stirred by the weight of her message. For the first time, he felt that someone saw more than his body. She saw the spirit within him, the questions, the longing for purpose. Athena told him that the greatest heroes are not those who strike hardest. They are those who know when to act and why they act at all. Heracles bowed his head, humbled by the truth in her words. He realized that even the strongest arm can falter without a clear mind. Athena, seeing his openness, placed her hand upon his shoulder. "Your path will be hard," she said, "but you will not walk it blind. Where strength fails, wisdom will show the way. Where fear grows, courage will guide you." Heracles felt her words sink deep, like roots into soil. For the first time, he sensed that his journey had direction. She spoke to him not as a god to a mortal, but as a teacher to a student. There was no scorn, no judgment, only guidance and quiet faith. Heracles looked up, his eyes filled with gratitude and wonder. "Athena," he said, "I will listen. Teach me, and I will learn." And so began their bond, one of strength and wisdom side by side. Athena did not walk every step with him, yet her presence lingered. When he faced challenges, he remembered her calm, her steady light. When anger threatened to blind him, her words brought clarity. when despair whispered, he recalled her promise that he was not alone. In time, he grew to trust not only his muscles, but his mind. He began to see obstacles not just as walls, but as puzzles. Every stone in his path held a lesson, every trial a hidden truth. Athena had taught him that force could move mountains, but wisdom shaped destiny. Heracles carried her lesson like armor, unseen yet unbreakable. And though their first meeting was brief, it became eternal in his heart. The world around him seemed brighter, filled with meaning where before there was weight. He knew now that his life was not just burden, but also purpose. The people who looked upon him saw only a hero of muscle. But within, Heracles carried Athena's gift, the seed of wisdom. She had awakened in him the truth that greatness is more than strength. It is strength guided by vision, shaped by thought, and softened by compassion. And so, the hero and the goddess walked together in spirit. Each step Heracles took, he felt her unseen guidance at his side. Every triumph he earned was not only his, but a harmony of power and wisdom. Athena had chosen him, not for his might, but for his willingness to grow. Heracles, once only a boy of restless strength, had begun his true journey. For now, his heart and mind moved together, no longer divided. The first meeting of Athena and Heracles became a light in legend. It was the spark that turned strength into heroism and burden into destiny. And from that day, Heracles knew his story would not be written by force alone. It would be written with the hand of wisdom guiding every step forward. Life is never without its trials, and for Heracles, they came like waves upon the shore. Each day brought a challenge, not always of battle, but of spirit and mind. The world seemed to test him, measuring his heart as much as his hands. These challenges were not punishments, but lessons in disguise. Every person, whether hero or ordinary, faces such hidden tests in life. For Heracles, they appeared in moments when strength alone was not enough. He would meet obstacles that no muscle could move, no force could break. And in these trials, he began to understand the meaning of true endurance. One day, a great boulder blocked the path of travelers in his village. Heracles rushed forward, believing he could simply push it aside. He pressed with all his power, yet the rock held firm. Strain filled his body, but the stone would not move. Frustration rose in him, and anger whispered of failure. Yet then he paused, recalling Athena's words about patience. He stepped back, studied the ground, and saw a hidden truth. The stone was lodged not by size, but by the earth beneath. Heracles dug around it, loosening the soil, shifting the weight. With a new approach, the boulder rolled free with ease. The villagers cheered, not only for his strength, but for his cleverness. Heracles himself smiled, for he had learned that thought completes power. On another occasion, he faced a river too wild to cross. Its currents roared, swift and dangerous, daring him to leap. At first, he readied himself to fight the waters with brute force. But again, Athena's teaching echoed in his memory. He paused, studied the flow, and searched for another way. Far upstream, he saw a cluster of fallen trees. With effort, he guided them together, forming a bridge across the waves. The river was crossed not by muscle, but by mind. And once again, Heracles grew wiser from the trial. Such challenges came often, disguised in everyday tasks. They shaped him, slowly but surely, into more than a man of strength. He became a man of vision, able to see beyond the surface. Yet with each victory, he also felt the weight of expectation. People praised him as a hero, but he knew he was still learning. Every success was not an end, but another step in his path. For the true challenge was not the rock, the river, or the burden. It was the discipline to remain calm, to think, to trust in wisdom. Athena's unseen guidance followed him in these moments of struggle. Though she did not always appear, her presence lingered in thought. Heracles began to carry her lessons like a second heartbeat. He no longer rushed blindly at every obstacle. He learned to pause, to breathe, to see the hidden path. Sometimes, the greatest strength is the patience to wait. Sometimes, the greatest victory is restraint. These trials revealed to him the truth of life's journey. Challenges are not curses, but mirrors, showing us who we are. Through them, Heracles discovered not only what he could do, but who he could become. He saw that wisdom and strength together create harmony. The villagers who watched him grew to admire not just his power. They admired his calm, his thoughtfulness, his quiet growth. Heracles himself no longer sought only to prove his might. He sought to understand, to rise above anger, to choose wisely. Each challenge became a story, a lesson carved into his heart. And so, the boy of restless energy became a man of resilience. Life had tested him, but in those tests, he found his true self. Athena's influence shone through every trial, a light unseen yet guiding. Heracles had begun to master not only the world around him, he had begun to master the greater world within. And in that mastery, he discovered a new kind of strength. Not the strength that lifts stones, but the strength that carries wisdom. A strength that turns trials into teachers and burdens into blessings. This was the gift of challenge, and Heracles embraced it fully. Heracles grew more confident, yet his journey was far from simple. For every triumph, a new challenge rose to test his resolve. The path of growth is never straight, but winding and full of turns. Athena's words echoed within him, a compass guiding his restless spirit. One morning, he entered a village plagued by fear and sorrow. The people whispered of shadows that stole food and frightened children. They begged Heracles to save them, believing his strength was the answer. Heracles promised help, but his mind remembered Athena's teaching. Not all threats can be defeated with fists or force alone. At dusk, he waited by the fields, watching the quiet land. He saw movement, not of monsters, but of desperate villagers. Hungry families, driven by need, had taken what was not theirs. Heracles felt anger stir, yet also sorrow for their plight. He remembered Athena's lesson: see the truth beneath the surface. Instead of striking, he approached with calm words and open hands. "Why do you take in secret?" he asked, "when we can solve this together?" The villagers trembled, expecting wrath, but heard compassion instead. They spoke of famine, of failing crops, of children with empty bellies. Heracles listened, his heart heavy with understanding. He realized the true enemy was not theft, but hunger itself. So he gathered the village, both the fearful and the desperate. Together, they worked to till the fields, mend the soil, plant anew. Heracles used his strength not to punish, but to build. He dug irrigation channels, lifted stones, cleared the way for growth. Athena's guidance lived in his actions, though she remained unseen. When the crops began to sprout, hope returned to the people. They praised him not for striking down foes, but for restoring life. Heracles felt a deeper pride than any victory of strength. He had brought peace not with force, but with wisdom and care. Days later, as he rested beneath an olive tree, Athena appeared. Her presence was gentle, her gaze proud, yet calm. "You have chosen well," she said, "for true heroes mend what is broken." Heracles bowed his head, humbled by her words. He realized that greatness lies not in conquering, but in healing. Athena told him that power guided by compassion becomes lasting. Strength alone may win today, but wisdom secures tomorrow, she said. Heracles held those words close, like a flame in his chest. The lesson shaped him more than any test of muscle. From that day, he sought not only to protect, but to nurture. He walked into villages as more than a warrior. He became a symbol of balance, of force tempered by kindness. And yet, each act of mercy brought new questions within him. Could he always choose wisely? Could he always resist anger's call? Heracles knew the road ahead would test him again and again. But Athena's faith gave him courage to continue forward. The villagers remembered him not just as a savior, but as a teacher. They told stories of the strong man who solved hunger with compassion. And those stories spread, shaping how others saw the hero. Heracles, once known only for might, was now praised for wisdom. The world began to see him as more than a figure of muscle. He had become a light of hope, a guide for others. Yet in his own heart, he remained a student of Athena. Every step forward was a lesson, every act a reflection. The bond between goddess and hero grew deeper in spirit. Athena saw in him not perfection, but willingness to learn. And that, she knew, was the mark of a true hero. Heracles walked on, carrying strength in his body and wisdom in his soul. And wherever he went, seeds of hope grew in his wake. This was not just his journey of trials. It was the beginning of a legacy, written not in force, but in compassion. The journey of Heracles soon carried him beyond familiar villages and quiet valleys. He walked roads where few dared to travel, guided by a restless heart. The world beyond was wide, full of wonders, yet also filled with trials. Every new horizon reminded him that learning never truly ends. One evening, as the sun sank low, he entered a town near despair. The air was heavy, the people anxious, their eyes clouded with worry. They spoke of endless storms that had ruined their fields for seasons. The skies had turned against them, and hope was nearly gone. Heracles listened, remembering Athena's counsel about seeing deeper truths. He studied the fields, the withered crops, the dark horizon above. He sensed the storms were not natural, but tied to imbalance. In the quiet of night, Athena appeared, her light soft as silver. She gazed upon him with calm strength, her voice measured and clear. "Heracles," she said, "not every trial is solved by strength or compassion. Some demand balance, patience, and harmony with the world around you." He nodded, though uncertainty tugged at his mind and heart. Athena guided him to the edge of the fields and the sky. She showed him the river's blocked path, where waters swelled in frustration. The storms above reflected the turmoil of the land below. Heracles realized nature itself needed release, not resistance. He worked tirelessly, moving earth and stone to open the river's way. The waters surged forward, flowing freely to nourish the soil. With each stone lifted, he remembered that strength served balance. The storms began to fade, clouds drifting away as peace returned. The people rejoiced, their voices lifted with gratitude and relief. Heracles, however, felt a quiet joy, not pride or vanity. He understood more clearly that harmony was the root of peace. Athena stood beside him, her eyes bright with approval. "You have learned well," she said, "for heroes must heal the world, not break it." Heracles bowed, humbled yet uplifted by her words of trust. He saw that wisdom was not only in thought, but in action. To restore balance was to honor both strength and patience. The villagers celebrated him, but Heracles felt more like a servant to the greater good, not a master of power. As he walked onward, the lesson followed him like a steady flame. He saw rivers, hills, and skies not as obstacles, but as teachers. Every storm carried meaning, every silence a whisper of truth. Athena's unseen hand guided him toward deeper understanding of the world. On the road, he met travelers burdened with fear of the unknown. To them, he shared his stories, teaching calm and perseverance. He became not just a figure of strength, but a voice of guidance. Children listened in awe, adults in gratitude, all finding hope renewed. Heracles had grown into a bridge between the divine and the mortal. He did not claim the wisdom as his own, but gave credit to Athena, for he knew her guidance was the light that shaped his growth. The bond between them was no longer just of goddess and hero. It was the bond of teacher and student, of trust and faith. Every step forward deepened his sense of purpose and belonging. He was no longer lost, no longer weighed down by strength alone. He carried a new harmony, born of wisdom and tempered by kindness. And so, Heracles journeyed on, with storms behind and clarity ahead. The world awaited him, not only as a man of might, but as a hero who carried within him the wisdom of Athena. His path stretched far, yet his heart remained steady and strong. For he had learned that the greatest victories are those that restore balance, and that truth would guide him through every trial yet to come. Heracles journeyed onward, his name carried ahead of him by whispers and stories. People spoke of his strength, but also of his kindness and wisdom. He was no longer seen only as a warrior, but as a guide and helper. Yet the road was long, and each step tested his patience and heart. One afternoon, he came to a village caught in dispute and division. Two groups quarreled endlessly, each claiming the same land as their own. Their anger burned hot, and bitterness had broken families and friendships apart. When they saw Heracles, they cried out for him to decide the matter. They wanted strength to settle what words had failed to heal. Heracles stood silent, listening as both sides shouted their truths. Their voices clashed like storms, drowning out reason and harmony. He felt the weight of their hopes pressing upon him like stone. In his heart, anger stirred, tempting him to choose quickly by force. But then he remembered Athena's calm voice and steady light. He recalled her words. A hero does not divide, but seeks balance. So he asked each side to share their story, not in shouts, but in calm. At first, they resisted, but Heracles' quiet patience softened their fury. Slowly, voices lowered, truths emerged, and hidden fears came to light. He saw that their quarrel was not truly about land, but about survival. One side feared hunger, the other feared exile from their home. Heracles breathed deeply, thinking not as a fighter, but as a student of wisdom. He walked the disputed land, studying its soil, its streams, its sun. Then he returned and spoke to the people with steady conviction. This land is wide enough for both, if you choose harmony over pride. He showed them how to divide the fields in fairness and cooperation. He offered his strength to build irrigation so both sides could thrive together. The people watched, stunned by his refusal to strike or punish. Instead, he used wisdom to mend what anger had torn apart. And when the fields flourished again, the village found peace and unity. Children played across borders once marked by anger, now free of fear. The elders, once divided, now shared food beneath the same sky. They praised Heracles, not as a judge, but as a healer of hearts. Athena appeared that night, her presence glowing like the moon's grace. She smiled upon him, her voice full of quiet approval. "You have done more than end a quarrel, Heracles," she said. "You have sown peace, which grows stronger than any wall of stone." Heracles bowed deeply, humbled by her praise, grateful for her guidance. He knew then that wisdom could turn even hatred into friendship. The lesson burned bright within him like a torch against the dark. He carried it forward, ready for the trials yet to come. For he understood that not all battles are fought with weapons. Some are won in patience, in listening, in the courage to wait. The story of the reconciled village spread across distant lands. It became a tale told by firesides, inspiring others to seek harmony. Heracles' name grew not only as a hero of might, it grew as a symbol of balance, of power guided by wisdom. Yet Heracles did not let pride claim him, for he knew the truth. Every step of wisdom came from Athena's light upon his path. He remained her student, her follower, and her willing companion. The road stretched onward, full of unknown trials and hidden lessons. But Heracles no longer walked as a boy chasing strength. He walked as a man carrying both strength and wisdom in harmony. And with Athena's guidance, he knew his journey would shape not just himself. It would shape the lives of those he touched and the world beyond. The journey of Heracles carried him further into lands both wild and wondrous. He walked through valleys rich with vines and fields golden with grain. The sun rose bright, and yet in his heart there was a quiet unease. For though he had brought peace to a village, new trials always awaited. One morning, he found himself before a temple standing silent and grand. Its pillars reached high, carved with symbols of wisdom and justice. Villagers gathered at its gates, their faces marked with worry and fear. They recognized Heracles and begged him to step inside and help. The high priestess explained that the sacred temple was falling into shadow. The flame of knowledge that once burned within now flickered weak and small. Without it, the people feared ignorance would spread like endless night. Heracles felt the weight of their hope pressing upon his shoulders. He entered the temple, its halls cool and filled with whispering echoes. Dust hung in the air, and the great flame struggled to survive. Heracles knelt before the flame, humbled by its fragile glow. He wondered what strength could do when wisdom itself seemed to fade. Athena's voice filled the chamber, soft yet powerful as flowing water. "Strength alone cannot guard wisdom, Heracles," she said with gentle clarity. "You must find the keeper of truth, hidden within shadowed halls." Guided by her words, he rose and walked deeper into the temple. The walls closed around him, etched with forgotten stories of gods and men. He saw carvings of kings who ruled with pride but lost to folly. He saw images of humble leaders who listened and brought peace to many. At last, in the innermost chamber, he found a frail old figure. The keeper of truth sat in silence, eyes clouded but wise. The keeper spoke softly. "Knowledge dies when pride silences the voice of truth." Heracles bowed and listened, realizing wisdom must be carried, not claimed. The keeper asked him, "Will you tend the flame, not with power, but with care?" Heracles nodded, vowing to guard it as a shepherd guards his flock. He lifted the flame carefully, carrying it back to the altar. The villagers waited, silent with hope as the chamber glowed again. Heracles placed the flame gently, and it blazed brighter than before. The people rejoiced, but Heracles reminded them with a steady voice, "This flame is not mine, nor any single hand's to hold. It belongs to all who seek wisdom, all who guard truth together." Athena appeared once more, her eyes filled with pride and grace. She said, "You have learned that wisdom cannot be claimed by force. It must be shared, nurtured, and carried by many hearts." Heracles felt her blessing like a warm wind upon his spirit. The villagers honored him, but he left quietly as dawn rose. He knew his path was not glory, but the tending of wisdom. The flame burned now, not only in the temple, but in his heart. Each step he took carried the light, unseen yet ever present. And as the road stretched onward, Heracles understood a deeper truth, that his labors were not chains, but lessons, guiding him to harmony. Strength and wisdom walked beside him, as Athena's voice echoed within. And though many trials awaited, he no longer feared the shadows. For where wisdom burned, darkness could never claim the final word. The road carried Heracles into a land where mountains touched the very sky. Snow glistened on their peaks, while valleys below slept in shadow and mist. Travelers warned him of a challenge that awaited in those silent heights. It was said the winds there carried voices of doubt and despair. No one who climbed returned unchanged, for the mountain tested the soul. Heracles accepted the path, guided by Athena's unseen presence beside him. The climb was steep, and the air grew thin with every step upward. His breath came heavy, but his heart pressed on with steady resolve. Halfway up, the winds began to whisper words that chilled his spirit. "You are nothing but a brute," the voice said, cold and sharp. "Without strength, you are empty. Without wisdom, you are lost in shadow." Heracles paused, shaken, for the words struck at his deepest doubts. He remembered mistakes of his past, times when anger led him astray. The voice grew stronger, echoing his failures, feeding his hidden fears. But then Athena's voice touched his heart, steady and calm as light. "Doubt is a shadow, Heracles. It cannot stay where truth is spoken." He drew breath, steadied himself, and spoke into the howling air. "I am more than strength. I am guided by wisdom and purpose." The winds roared, but the shadow voice faltered at his steady words. Heracles climbed higher, though each step tested both body and spirit. The mountain grew darker, and illusions danced before his eyes. He saw visions of himself failing, of people turning away in scorn. He saw Athena leaving him, her light vanishing into endless night. The fear nearly broke him, but he pressed his hand to his heart. Within, he felt the flame of wisdom he had carried from the temple. It glowed quietly, reminding him that truth was stronger than illusion. Heracles whispered, "Wisdom walks with me, and I do not climb alone." The visions faded, dissolving like mist under the morning sun. At last, he reached the summit where the sky opened wide around him. The world stretched below, rivers shining like silver threads through green lands. Heracles knelt, humbled not by victory, but by what he had learned. Strength could carry him upward, but only wisdom steadied his heart. Athena appeared, her form shining brighter than the snow around them. "Well done, Heracles," she said, her voice gentle yet powerful as dawn. "You faced not a beast of flesh, but the shadow within yourself. You have seen that the greatest struggle lies not outside, but within." Heracles bowed deeply, gratitude filling his heart like clear, rushing water. He understood then that a hero was not one who never feared. A hero was one who faced fear and chose truth over despair. Athena placed her hand upon his shoulder, blessing him once more. "You grow not only in strength and wisdom, but in spirit, Heracles. This journey is shaping you into more than you yet imagine." Heracles descended the mountain with steady steps, his heart alight with peace. The villagers below saw him and marveled at the calm in his eyes. He spoke no boast, no tale of triumph, only words of quiet truth. The mountain is not conquered by force, but by the courage to listen. And so his story spread again, carried on winds softer than before. Heracles walked on, ready for the trials yet waiting on distant paths. For he knew each challenge was not an end, but a teacher in disguise. And as the mountains faded behind him, Athena's voice lingered in his soul. Walk on, Heracles. The world waits for the light you now carry. Heracles walked into lands where rivers ran wide and forests sang with life. The air was warm, filled with the scent of pine and wildflowers in bloom. Villagers came to him with worry, their faces heavy with sorrow and loss. A drought had struck their fields, leaving their harvest dry and broken. Streams once full had vanished, and the earth cracked beneath the sun. They begged Heracles for help, for their children cried with hunger and thirst. Heracles listened, his heart heavy with their pain and their pleading voices. He knew strength alone could not summon water or heal the parched land. He knelt upon the ground, pressing his palm to the hardened soil. It felt lifeless, yet beneath it, he sensed something waiting to awaken. Athena's voice came, soft as wind through leaves, clear as flowing water. Seek the hidden spring, Heracles. It waits where patience and care reveal it. Guided by her words, he set out across the barren hills. He studied the land, watching where birds flew and plants clung to life. He saw willows standing tall, though all else around them withered away. There, he pressed his ear to the ground and heard a faint whisper. The sound of water, deep below, hidden but not lost forever. Heracles called the villagers and showed them the place of the hidden spring. He dug into the earth, not with force alone, but with careful hands. The villagers joined him, working together as sweat mixed with hope. At last, the soil gave way, and water burst forth clear and bright. It flowed like silver, filling the dry cracks, feeding the thirsty ground. The people cried out with joy, their hands lifted in gratitude and wonder. Children laughed as they splashed in the cool stream that now ran free. Heracles smiled, but he reminded them gently of what truly saved them. It is not my strength alone, but our patience, faith, and shared effort. Athena appeared in the water's reflection, her eyes calm and shining. You have learned, Heracles, she said, that life springs from wisdom's care. Strength may break stone, but only wisdom knows where to strike. Heracles bowed, his heart swelling with reverence and gratitude for her guidance. The villagers planted anew, their fields green with promise and renewal. They built channels to guide the water, ensuring its blessing reached all. The drought ended, not by force, but by harmony with the land. Heracles stayed to help them learn, teaching them patience and balance. He showed them how to listen to the earth and read its signs. He reminded them that nature is not conquered, but nurtured with respect. And so the village thrived again, its people bound by unity and care. When Heracles departed, they honored him not as a savior of strength, but as a guide who listened, who showed them the wisdom of the earth. As he journeyed on, he carried the lesson deep within his soul, that true power was not in command, but in harmony with creation. Athena's voice lingered, her words like cool water on a weary path. Wherever you walk, Heracles, remember that wisdom flows quietly like a spring. He walked onward, the road stretching ahead, the horizon bright with promise. For he knew the journey was shaping him into more than a hero, It was shaping him into a keeper of balance, a servant of wisdom. And with each step, the bond between strength and wisdom grew unbreakable. Heracles smiled, ready for the next trial that the world would bring. The journey of Heracles drew toward its quiet and solemn end beneath the wide sky. He had walked through valleys, mountains, and rivers, carrying wisdom alongside strength. Every step had shaped him, teaching him lessons no weapon could ever give. He was no longer the restless figure seeking only glory and recognition. He had become a man whose heart listened, whose strength served harmony. Now the road brought him to a sacred grove where olive trees stood tall. The air was calm, filled with the scent of earth and the sound of doves. Heracles felt Athena's presence before she even appeared, radiant and serene. She stood before him, her eyes shining with both pride and grace. "Heracles," she said, "your journey has reached its destined turning point. You have faced not just the world's trials, but the shadows within yourself. You have learned that wisdom is the compass guiding strength to serve rightly." Heracles bowed his head, humbled by her words, filled with quiet gratitude. He recalled each trial, each lesson, each moment where wisdom had saved him. The quarreling villagers, the fading flame, the mountain of doubt, the hidden spring. Each test was not of power alone, but of patience, balance, and truth. Athena placed her hand upon his shoulder, her touch steady and calm. "You are ready to walk forward, not as a fighter, but as a guide." Heracles lifted his eyes, not with pride, but with the strength of peace. "I see now, Athena," he said, "that my path was never about conquest. It was about harmony, about bringing balance where chaos once ruled." Athena smiled, her voice soft, like wind moving gently through olive leaves. "The greatest heroes are not those who break walls, but those who build bridges. The world will remember you not only for strength, but for wisdom." Heracles felt her blessing flow through him like clear water through stone. He stood taller, not from pride, but from the serenity of purpose. The grove glowed with light, though no sun or flame was seen. It was the light of wisdom, burning eternal, carried within his soul. Heracles knew then that his story would not end in violence or grief. It would live in the hearts of those who chose peace and courage. Children would grow hearing not only of his might, but of his wisdom. They would learn that a hero listens, heals, and walks with patience. Athena spoke one final time, her words echoing like song across the grove. "Go, Heracles. Carry this light forward, for the world forever needs it." And with that, she faded into the wind, leaving her presence within him. Heracles remained a moment in silence, listening to the song of the trees. The journey behind him was long, but the journey ahead was endless. Not of labors imposed, but of choices guided by harmony and wisdom. He walked onward, his steps calm, his heart free of restless weight. And though the world would test him again, he no longer feared the trial. For wherever he walked, Athena's voice remained, steady as the morning sun. And so the tale of Heracles did not close with battle or sorrow. It closed with wisdom carried forward, a flame eternal, a light unbroken. A story not of endings, but of beginnings, written in the hearts of many. Heracles walked on, and the world was brighter because he had lived.